We go to chapter 22, the labor market. When we talk about the labor market, we're talking about where the demand for and the supply of labor is exchanged. So we go down. The demand curve for labor. As I said, the price of labor is the wage rate. This is the amount of money that has to be paid to people for them to work for a period of time. The demand curve for labor slopes downwards from left to right. This is because the wage rate and the demand for labor are inversely related. This means that when wages rises, firms demand fewer workers, and when wages fall, they demand more. So the demand curve for labor is downward slope. Why is it downward slope? Before we go to why it is downward slope, first, they said the price for labor is wage rate. That means the wage rate is the amount of money that you have to pay to those workers based on the fact that they have done certain job for you for a specific period of time. That is what wage rate is. Then the demand for labor, we said, is it's downward slope. Why is it downward slope? It is downward slope because as soon as the wage rate increases, the quantity demanded of labor would fall. And when the wage rate falls, the quantity demanded for labor would increase. That is why it is inverse. There's inverse relationship between the demand for labor and the wage rate. So we go down. Factors affecting the demand for labor. So before we go to the factors affecting the demand for labor, what is demand for labor? Demand for labor is the number of workers firms are willing and able to employ at a given wage rate. Demand for labor is the numbers of workers firms are willing to employ at a given wage rate. That is what demand for labor is. So factors affecting the demand for labor. The wage rate is not the only factor that affects the demand for labor. Below are some other influences. So these are other factors that affect demand for labor. One, demand for the product. Demand for labor is said to be a derived demand. This means that the demand for labor is derived from the demand for the goods and services supplied by firms and public sector organizations. We used to call, the economists used to say that demand for labor is derived. Labor is derived demand. Why is it demand for labor derived demand? Labor is derived demand because it is only when people are needed to do a job or to perform a particular task, that is when they are employed. Nobody will employ you for no reason and start paying you. They would employ you because there's a space, there's a vacant position that has to be filled up. There's a job, there's a task, there's a responsibility that has to be done. So that is why you are being hired. So that's why we call derived or demand for labor as a derived demand, because labor will only be demanded when there's a job or there's a task for that it has to perform. That is the first one, demand for labor. So if the demand for labor increases, then if the quantity demanded for goods or services increases for a firm, the demand for labor would increase, shifting the demand curve rightward from DL to DL1. It is shown here from DL1 to DL2. That means demand for labor is increasing, and the quantity of labor would increase from QL1 to QL2. Wage rate is constant. For wage rate, it is either contracting or expanding. So that's the first one. Two, availability of substitutes. As I said, the demand for labor may be affected by the cost and availability of substitutes for labor. For example, in many organizations, it is possible to replace people with machines. If firms believe that machines are more efficient and cheaper than people, they will probably substitute people with machines in getting started. So another factor that affects the demand for labor is availability of substitute. And the substitute for labor is machine. So if firms understand or realize that investing on capital equipment like technology or machine is more efficient and more productive than employing workers, then they will start investing on capital goods like equipment and machine and technology rather than investing on people. So they will not hire. So the demand for labor would reduce if firms realize that machines will be more efficient and more productive than workers. So the demand for labor will shift leftward from DL2 to DL1, and the quantity of labor that will be needed will reduce or will contract from QL2 to QL1. That is availability of substitutes. The third factor that affects the quantity demanded or demand for labor is the productivity of labor. So the productivity of labor may also affect demand. If every worker is able to produce more output, demand for workers is likely to increase. This is because production becomes more profitable, provided the extra output can be sold. So if the productivity of workers are increasing. If it is known or noted that labor productivity is increasing, that means demand for labor would increase, because firms will understand that if they employ more workers, they will be more productive and more efficient, and they will be able to produce extra output. So, and to be more profitable for them. So if productivity of labor is increasing, then demand for labor would increase, shifting the demand curve rightward from DL1 to DL2. The other factor is other employment costs. So, we said demand for labor is derived demand. As a result, that means workers will be employed. So if the amounts to be spent or the cost of employing worker is higher, then demand for labor would fall. But if, in the other hand, the cost of employing worker is less, demand for labor would increase, shifting the demand curve rightward from DL1 to DL2. That is, if the cost of employing workers is less, the demand curve will shift from DL1 to DL2. But if the cost of employing workers is high, the demand curve will shift leftward from DL2 to DL1, which means the quantity needed of labor would fall from QL2 to QL1. And we go down to the supply curve for labor. The supply, when we talk about supply of labor, the supply of labor is the number of workers making themselves available for job at a given wage rate. The supply of labor is the total number of workers making themselves available for job at a given wage rate. That is supply of labor. So the supply of labor curve slopes upward from left to right. This is because wages and quantity of labor supplied are proportionally related. That means there's direct relationship between wages and quantity of labor supply. So it is upward slope to the right, from left to the right. So they said, if wage rates rises, more people will make themselves available for work. The supply curve of labor. So what it simply means is that if wage rate increases, the number of people that will be willing to work would increase. That means people will be more motivated to work because the wage rate has increased. On the other hand, if the wage rate falls, people become demotivated and they don't have the incentive to want to work. As a result, the supply of labor would reduce. That is for wage rates. Then we have other factors that would shift the wage rate rightward or leftward. Number one, population size. In most countries in the world, the size of population is growing. The global population was 74 billion in 2016. However, this was predicted to rise to 97 billion by 2050. As the population grows, there will be more people available to work. Therefore, the supply of labor will tend to increase over time. So for population size, so if the population increases, the supply of labor will shift rightward from SL1 to SL2, and the quantity of labor that will be supplied to the market will increase from QL1 to QL2. That is for population size. Then we go to migration. For migration, many countries welcome immigrants to help increase the working population. For example, many countries in the Middle East have a history of welcoming foreign workers. In Bahrain in 2015, 69.2% of the population were immigrants. In recent years, a number of countries in the European Union have welcomed the arrival of foreign workers as a result of new members enjoying the rights to cross international borders within the EU to work. So, immigration. Migration means the movement of people in and out of a country. So immigration is the movement of people into a country. So if the movement of people into a country is increasing, they are always economic, we call them economic immigrants. So they are going to a country not for pleasure, not for tourism. They are going to that country to seek for employment. As a result, the supply of labor will increase, shifting the supply curve rightward from SL1 to SL2. So an increase in the number of immigrants into a country will shift the supply curve rightward. The third one, the age distribution of the population. The age distribution of the overall population of the country may have an effect. In most developed countries, in the world, there is an aging population. This means that the number of people over the age of about 65 years as a proportion of the total population is increasing. This also means that the dependency ratio is rising. This is the proportion of dependent, non-workers to workers in the population. As the population ages, the dependency ratio may increase, and this places the financial burden on the rest of the population. So another factor that determines the supply of labor is how aging the population is. So an aging population means the population is becoming less active. And as a result of that, the supply of labor would fall, shifting the supply curve leftward from SL2 to SL1. And the quantity of labor supplied to the market will also fall from QL2 to QL1. That is, if the population is, if the aging population is increasing, the supply of labor would fall. The fourth one, so rather, retirement age. In many countries, once people reach a certain age, they are entitled to a state pension. This is called the retirement age. For example, in Canada, the government announced in 2016 that the retirement age would rise from 65 to 67. Although the change is not due to be introduced until 2023, this means that people will have to work for longer before they are entitled to any state benefit. Therefore, the supply of labor will increase in Canada. So the supply of labor can also be based on retirement age. So if the number of workers, if the retirement age is increased, then the supply of labor would increase. But if the retirement age is reduced, then the supply of labor would also reduce, shifting its leftward. The next one is school leaving age. For school leaving age, we're talking about the age that children will reach before they are being allowed to work. If the school leaving age is increasing, then the supply of labor would fall because it will take longer period of time before children graduate from school to be able to work. But if the school leaving age reduces, the supply of labor would fall, meaning that now if the school age reduces, the supply of labor would rise, meaning that people would leave school earlier than expected and they will be able to seek for employment, shifting the supply curve rightward from SL1 to SL2. Female participation. If the number of female that are involved in the labor market is increasing, then the supply of labor would increase. Why, if the number of people, female that are allowed to work in the labor market is reducing, the supply of labor will definitely fall. The skills and qualification. The supply of labor will tend to increase if people become more employable. This can happen if people have good skills and are well qualified. The quality of labor is discussed. So the supply of labor can also have an impact based on skills and qualification. If people are not employable, that means they don't have the skills required or the qualification required to get a job. That means they won't be able to make themselves available for job. But if they have the skills and the requirements to work, then they will be able to make themselves available for job. That means they are employable. And that will shift the supply curve for labor rightward from SL1 to SL2. I think the point is clear. Then the next one is labor mobility. When we're talking about labor mobility, we're talking about geographical mobility of labor or occupational mobility of labor. So how often is it possible for workers to be able to move from one geographical location to another? If they are able to move from one geographical location to another, then the supply curve of labor in that geographical location will shift rightward from SL1 to SL2. But if it is difficult for workers to move from one location to another, maybe because of family, the supply curve for labor in that geographical location would fall, shifting it leftward from SL2 to SL1. They will have wage determination. So for the wage determination, they said the wage rate in any labor market is determined by the interaction of the supply and the demand for labor. The equilibrium, that is what we call the equilibrium wage rate, which is determined where the supply and demand curve of labor is equal. So we call it equilibrium wage rate because demand for and supply of labor are meeting at that point. That point is called equilibrium wage rate. And based on this graph, the equilibrium wage rate is $800 and the equilibrium quantity for demand for labor and supply of labor is at 80. So that is what we call wage rate equilibrium. Then the importance of the quality, the quantity, and the quality of labor to businesses. So when a business is considering locations for its operation, it is not just the cost of labor that is important. It is important. It's also the quantity and the quality of human capital. And we know what human capital is. The added value or the value of labor. The value labor is going to add to the industry or to the operations is called human capital. So the business is not likely to locate the factory in a particular place just because labor is cheap. The business has to consider whether the labor available meets the skills required to maintain quality standards. Businesses cannot afford the consequences of poor quality work. In some of the locations where labor is cheap, most of the workers are unskilled and often poorly educated. Consequently, business setting up an operation in the location may have to invest a substantial sum of money in the training unless all the work on offer is unskilled. So when I talk about the quantity and quality of labor to businesses, so here we're talking about when a firm or a business is deciding on locating its factory or firm or its company in a geographical location, it should not just think about the cost of labor. It should rather also think about the quality and the quantity of human capital. how many workers are available with the right skills that will be needed for that job. If there are no people, the workers are not skilled or qualified for that job, then it should be expected that the quality of output would be poor, which would affect the reputation of the business. However, the business might also consider that, oh, with unskilled workers, they need to invest more in training to improve their skills and knowledge. And if that is done well, it will be better. But for thinking about jobs that need skilled workers, then firms should always locate where the quality and quantity of human capital is high, so that they will be able to get the best use of resources over them. The next paragraph. When choosing a location, businesses have to ensure that there are enough workers near to the site choosing. They will also have to consider whether there will be enough workers in the future if operations needed to expand. So then they're beginning to find recruitment difficult in China. So another factor when you're choosing location is not just about now. It's not just about the present, it's also about the future. So it is important for the business to think about future employment. Is it going to be able to employ more workers in the future if the business needs to expand its operation? If not, then it should also put it in consideration to try to find a location that it will guarantee future recruitment of employees. That's the point there. Then the impact of education and training to the quality of human capital. The quality of human capital and the quality of labor can be improved through education and training. Although the price of labor is important for businesses when making decisions about how many workers to hire, the quality of labor is also important. Generally, employers will want to recruit people who can read and write and have good communication skills. They will also want to recruit people with specialist skills. If the labor supply is well educated and trained, it will be more productive. The responsibility for education and training in most countries is divided between the state and the firms. Over time, a country will want to improve the quality of labor so that it is more productive. This will require investment by the state and the firms in training and education. The main reason for training is to provide workers with the skills and knowledge needed to do their jobs effectively. As a result, their productivity will increase. However, there are several other reasons. For example, workers will need training if there are changes that might affect their jobs. Some examples might include new health and safety procedures, new technology, or new working practices. So businesses train their workers in a range of different jobs so that they are multi-skilled. This provides businesses with added flexibility. Also, workers will feel secured if they have been trained to do their job effectively. Not being able to do a job properly would be a source of anxiety, frustration, and dissatisfaction for workers. It's also argued that training can be used to motivate staff. So what we're talking about here is the importance of education and training on the quality of human capital. So basically we are referring to workers here. So if workers are trained and educated, it means that if this is the way it works, governments of a country might set a target or objective of improving the skills and knowledge of its workforce. And to do that, government of that country must invest heavily on education and training. And that would make the workforce of the economy to be more employable. This would improve the skills and workers of that economy. And that can also encourage FDIs, multinationals, to set up in that country. Also for firms might also have to train their workers. If they are able to train their workers, that improves their skills and their knowledge. And as a result, they will be able to increase productivity. That's not the only reason why education and training is important. Education and training also help businesses, help workers to become more flexible, they become multi-skilled. As a result, they have the flexibility to do different tasks, to carry out different tasks, which will also be beneficial to businesses. And also, when workers are trained and educated, they feel motivated and they feel valued, they feel important, they feel valued within the organization. And as a result of that, they would increase their motivation, that would increase their productivity. But if they are not trained, then they will become frustrated, they will become dissatisfied. And as a result, productivity would fall. So these are the reasons why education is important. Education and training is important to human capital. So we have the multiple choice question. Number 1. Which of the following would help to increase the labor supply in the country? The labor supply in the country, which means the number of workers available, making themselves available in the country, would increase if government raises the retirement age. If government raises the retirement age, it means people will still be at work even more than the age they're supposed to be at work. Number one is D. Question 2. Which of the following might be a reason for a business to invest more in training? If a business invests more in training, it will improve the labor flexibility. Yes, it means labor will be able to do different tasks. So number 2 is A. So question 1 is D, question 2 is A. So that ends chapter 22, the labor markets. Thank you.